the Regional Plan Committee. Hey.
I'll be happy to do that. By the way, as you can tell, Sarah is not with us tonight.
Yay.
It's on tape, buddy.
I heard that was good.
Mom's on vacation.
Okay, Ally Applet. Paul Byer,
Oh, yeah.
Tina Berger,
Here.
Alicia Chi. Abel Estrella. I know Dirk Foreman was excused. Cindy Garcia,
Present all the things.
Susie Garrettson.
Here.
Hamilton,
Here.
David Hayward,
Yep.
Bill James. Here. Julie Lead. Here. Greg Miller.
Here.
Tom Pearson. And him online.
No, he's not.
Walter Phelps. Kimberly Robinson. John Ruggles.
Here.
John Van Landingham. Leanne Bossack.
Here.
Al White. And Christy Zeller.
Don't have any of the committee members online today then?
Nope, so far. No.
We have 11.
That's just a good form.
Okay.
Good. We have some other friendly faces in the room. Our bureaucratic partners. You want to introduce yourselves?
Sure.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Michelson. I'm the housing planning manager at the city's housing section. Just here because we covered a lot of housing topics in this very broad chapter. So
I'm sorry, I missed your name.
I'm sorry, Jennifer Michelson, housing planning manager.
And I'm Dave McIntyre. I'm the Community Investment Director for the city. So I oversee a few programs. Economic development is the one most relevant to this chapter. Although I was thinking beautification and public art would probably have fit in this chapter too. So I'm curious where that's landing, but that is what I'm here for. And to spread bureaucracy wherever I can go. That was a joke.
And the beautification and public art isn't here, Dave. Just a little bit.
A little bit. Must have missed it somehow.
Good.
If you were here 1 minute later, you would have avoided having to introduce yourself, but
Would you like to reintroduce? Absolutely.
Fellow bureaucrat.
Evening, my name is Jess McNeely. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development for Coconino County and the Planning Manager. And happy to get to work here with all you great people.
I just wanted to say there's a message in the chat from Alicia that she is logging on.
Okay.
So
and before we do the Indigenous land acknowledgement, so you guys have a little bit of time to prepare a plan for the meeting today so that we can implement what Anthony and I said we were going to do last time, which is to try and do a little bit more of a hybrid of a more open range discussion about the various pieces, and then also dive into the details on the goals and policies. So I think our plan is, before we start that part of the agenda and the chapter review, we're gonna kind of go around the room, ask everyone which parts are most important to them, and then try to focus on those pieces. So, you know, this in the goals and policies, right, and in the chapter introduction, we're obviously kind of grouped into subject matter areas. So everyone take a moment, you know, take the time before we start to think about that.
The sections that we're looking at are like youth housing, economic development, prosperity, and what's the other one, Dave?
Neighborhoods.
Oh, the food thing. Urban food development. Everything that's within the chapter, we feel strong. If you have an opinion on any of those things, we'll write them down and put your name next to it so we can.
Like the record to show that John Van Landingham. Does anyone want to do the Indigenous land acknowledgement?
City of Flagstaff humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of various indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands still inhabited by their descendants. Mountains sacred to this people. Honor them, legacies, and their traditions. Celebrate their past, present, and generations. Will forever know this place as home.
You can go on. And also, I believe you're going to lead us in number 4, the house.
Okay, so I touched on this at our last meeting, but we're doing another round of public engagement, and we're gathering feedback that's going to inform the future growth illustration and the character statements that go along in the growth and land use chapter. So that would be a description of what an urban neighborhood should look like, or in terms of density and other characteristics. So that's the purpose of this engagement. We have an online open house, and we have 2 in-person events. The in-person events are this week on Thursday and Saturday. And those are going to be sort of an opportunity to do the online survey in person and talk to staff. And this is also a share back to the public of what happened with scenario choosing. So, so we have this landing page that is on the Flagstaff Regional Plan website. So flagstaffaz.gov/regional plan 2045 is the short link to that. And I can put that in the chat as well. And it has survey, I'll just like briefly show what the survey looks like, and you can feel free to check it out, and it would be great if you help us share it with your circle and get responses from the public on this, because it will influence how we're moving forward with the future growth illustration and the growth and land use chapter. So it has some background information. It has this familiar graphic that we shared at our last meeting. And it has some of the statistics, sort of an overview of the bird scenario. This is all to catch people up who haven't been part of this process. Then we have a slide showing the growth concept. This is also what Steiny shared at our last meeting. And there's opportunity to scroll back and forth between the current growth concept and the 2030 one with the same symbology. So compare how the activity centers have shifted position in this survey. And there's also a map of the neighborhoods. And then so that's all the background information. And then the survey itself has a series of images that are associated with each building blocks. So there's, say, 6 images for urban activity centers. And we're looking for people to tell us which image shows what they want to see in that urban activity centers, mostly in terms of what type of buildings and how tall those buildings should be. Then we also are where the locations of these activity centers. And then there's one of these series of images for each building block. So for urban neighborhood, for suburban neighborhood, we're also taking feedback on rural neighborhoods, even though those we're not proposing changes for those. Yeah, so that is kind of a general overview. So I'd recommend checking this out. It's right on the regional plan website. first tab. And please share it if you are able to.
Also, I had a quick question. So is this gonna be one of the last times that the public's going to be able to interact with the plan? Or is this just another opportunity and there'll be more in the future?
Well, there will be the public comment, a time when we're looking at 60-day public review that happens after we have a final draft of the plan. So that's an important time that they can weigh in, but this is that their last opportunity to weigh in while we're still writing, I would say. So
So it's a great place to touch point for public input as far as the regional plan is concerned.
yeah, in terms of getting that input from the people, this is a good opportunity. Public weigh-in, so.
You mentioned Thursday and Saturday. What are those events and where are they gonna be at?
Yeah, sure. So, the Thursday event is from 6 to 8 at the Boys and Girls Club. 301 South Paseo del Flag. And the Saturday event is at Hal Jensen Recreation Center from 9 to 11 on 2403 North Isabel Street. And if you forget those or don't write them down, we have flyers and we have the information on the top of the website. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
The online survey opened?
Oh, yes, that's important to say. It closes after this weekend. So it's a short window. It opened sort of last weekend. And it's kind of a quick push to get as much as we can before we're finalizing the future growth illustration.
Or any option to make it longer so you can?
Well, the difficulty with that is that we're actually bringing you all a draft of the future growth illustration next, at our next meeting. So it's a little bit tight to turn it around. And I think what we'll be giving you all at the next meeting is both a draft and the comments that maybe have not yet made it into that into that draft. So yeah, that's why we have to do it a little bit tight. So we're trying to push towards the open houses and hopefully we'll be able to, will be sort of a focal point for getting this feedback in a short time.
People can participate multiple times. If they participated before, they can come again.
Yeah. Wouldn't recommend filling out the survey multiple times, but if they've participated in a previous.
I like the survey results. I want to do it again and again.
I think we might catch that if we.
I won't, I'm too busy.
There are flyers back there, so feel free to take one. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I think that was everything that I wanted to say about the open house. Well, I can move on to the resource stewardship and resilience policy that we were going to look at. Switch my screen.
This is an item that we will come back to.
I thought that was the one that Al White wanted, and he wanted to wait until he was here.
Indeed. Yeah. And he is not here. Did he give his, he gave his feedback?
He said it was okay.
It was blessing.
Yeah.
And I overlooked it. We can. She starts talking about it.
So I'm putting up on the screen is the original version of, let me make sure I have it right. Slated. Okay, so the policy was RS 12. And original wording was proactively and equitably engage community members in neighborhood level, be in at the neighborhood level, and support community-wide resource stewardship and resilience efforts. And the critique of this policy was that it was a little vague and there were some implementation guidelines associated with it that I can show in a minute. And we wanted to make the connection stronger between those two. So the proposed replacement was engage residents proactively at the neighborhood level in the development and implementation of natural and cultural resource projects and programs, especially where there are vulnerable or historically disadvantaged populations affected. And the options for this proposed change would be to endorse the proposed language, adopt alternative language, or recommend that the policy and associated implementation guidelines. Response from Paul is also in the packet. You were that proposed to the group that we accept the proposed policy language. Discuss it further.
That's the trick. That's what he said. Eddie?
Yeah, I agree.
We're good to go.
So, I mean, the question is, from everything that we have in this chapter, both in the introduction and the narrative portion of it, and in the goals and policies portion of it, what are the parts that you particularly care about? And therefore we can, or make you really want to discuss, and therefore we can make sure we focus on those and don't spend too much time on other things that everyone's kind of in agreement about.
So. Where's some of this housing?
It's like a big,
Yeah. But under the guise of housing.
Yeah.
And then we also had food.
food is under the portion of. Have all the sections we have housing, have neighborhoods, cost of development, so supposed to provide an example. So the things in housing, the things that I have stronger feelings on are on expanding programs that strengthen protections. The community land trust. Sense of an implementation guideline. State funded housing. Anyone else got anything they want to really?
Maybe on how, both on housing. One of the implementation guidelines talked about increased public support for affordable housing. Promote that neighborhoods that have demonstrated opposition to it. That sounds like a brilliant idea. I haven't a clue how you do that. So I think it's something that we work on.
We got one under housing for Paul, and we're just gonna take names and then we'll go. Anybody else? Michelle? Thing as well? You have anything else? Tina?
Housing as it relates to statement in here that says, while there's growth, there's limited amount of new development. Sunnyside, south side. So that's kind of a big separate. Grapple so it's gonna fall into probably affordable housing and it's gonna say.
That's in the written portion. The other way around.
Susie? Yeah.
I have something to say about just about every one of them. You know, I've got my thing all marked up, so
Yeah, and
I get to go through it.
We will get to go through it. It's a matter of kind of.
Yeah, we'll be able to extend it.
And
Just
anyone else got anything on housing they're really?
Yes, I think the statement encouraging the development of land trust is well worthwhile, and if you can emphasize that by expand as possible, operate existing townsite community land trust, it's very valuable. I've served on their board for 3 years. Thank you.
For me, the housing supply and access section does not mention zoning or zoning challenges at all. Explore.
When we get into neighborhoods and equity, does anything want to have any pieces they'd like to focus on?
Don?
Good question, and I apologize, I came in late. So we're just putting down markers for later conversation. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
exactly. We're just trying to get a feel for everyone in the room of what we want the focus to be on.
Yeah,
So
if you, even if you just wanted to put your name on one of these things and you remembered it, do it as soon as we get done with goals and policies.
So housing supply, I had a couple of comments on, and then were we gonna address the preamble at all the?
Yeah, so we do have the option. I mean, I think as, you know, as we've kind of gone through before, it's, you know, potentially a little bit less key than the actual goals and policies itself, but we don't want to ignore it. So
Mark me down for preamble 2 as well then, please.
Would that be?
the narrative portion at the beginning. So neighborhoods and equity, am I hearing anything? One of my issues with this section was seems to always symbolize the implementation guidelines, but not seeing the law. Is everyone reading through it? Not seeing a lot.
Section.
Yeah.
You on? Oh, it's in.
Yeah.
The,
And Michelle?
More.
Sure.
Development, I have some concerns with fairness. And that's more in the guidelines and policies. Also with the written portion of the economy part. Preamble, whatever.
Can I just interrupt for a second? If you all could speak up, I think that people online are having a hard time hearing. So just speak up a little bit more, that'd be great.
Well, mine's housing, but also it kind of, because this chapter delves into everything, a piece into cost of development as well.
Oops. I have a piece in cost of development that I'd like to see added potentially. I'm not sure. If we're going to the economy portion, anyone got any,
Yeah, I mean, I want to discuss the economic development piece for sure. So, its strategies.
Give me a reason.
Got everybody.
Uh,
You got one more?
Policy CD.1, cost of development
got a
itself. CD.1.
engineer? She's like specific section.
There's
Where's the reference number?
one sentence that I would like to discuss.
Right, so why don't we start then with the folks that wanted to talk about the preamble? You had jumped right in there, so why don't you?
You saw my mouth full, huh?
I did, I was like, let's call them out.
So two things, one very specific and one general. And this kind of goes back to the general facto conversation that we've had at length is what needs to apply to land use policy and what doesn't. I mean, there's a whole lot of pages here and it's all good information, but I guess I would just ask that question of, does it need to relate to land use policy or not? And then very specifically, short-term rentals, it lists 535, which kind of felt low to me. So I went online and there was a reference to an Arizona Daily Sun article cited city of Flagstaff numbers at 1,045. And then airdna.com, which purports to tally the number of Airbnbs and vacation rentals in a community of 3,133. So I feel like if we're going to have that number in there, we might as well have it as up to date and accurate as possible, because the difference between 500 and 1,000 or 500 and 3,000 relative to our overall housing supply is pretty significant.
Oh, and on that topic, I wanted to ask housing staff if there's any in the building.
In the building.
Yeah, because John mentioned the Airbnb numbers that are slightly skewed depending on what information you're looking at. And I'm looking at the housing numbers that you're getting from the 22. The housing, the 10-year housing plan numbers from 2022. And that seems low to me too, since we've been saying that 7,000 number since 2016. And the recent Econa report stated over 12,000. I'm just wondering.
You're not talking about Airbnbs, you're talking about.
I'm talking about housing, since he covered Airbnbs. Yeah, I thought I'd jump on the housing one. To see, is there a reason why we're using those particular numbers in the regional plan? Is it specific to the city of Flagstaff collecting the data and how they do it? Or are we excluding the Econa report or the other reports that John mentioned for any other reason?
I would almost say that might be an ELSA. I think they wanted to use the 10-year housing plan numbers, but we kind of decided we should be using more updated because those are already 2 years old now. And so for some of the graphs, I know we wanted to pull census data if it's available, newer data if it's available, we want to use it. But I think just trying to get the draft out and pull data we already had was the initial goal. You mentioned a lot of different numbers and I wasn't quite sure what each of those were referring to, if we're talking about STRs or.
No, I was talking about housing and John was talking about the short term.
Oh, okay, like the goal number of the
Gap, the gap, I think, yeah. So it sounds to me like then we should, you know, if we have multiple data sources available, we should try and list all of them and date them and stuff like that, and I think that also
It's
covers
good.
our ass.
I think it's good in nature. It's all kind of arbitrary since as soon as these data reports come out, they're already ancient and 20 years from now, it'll be. But.
Yeah, I can make a note. That's what Judge Hughes just said, or is correct. He took these from the 10-year housing plan, and I'm not entirely sure what analysis they did in 2021 to get these numbers. So I can put a note in to see if we have updated data that we can use. The 535 short-term rentals excludes owner occupied rentals, so that is a smaller pool than the overall.
We, just so we know, we have Tyler Denham in the room who actually did the analysis for the 10-year housing, or gathered all that data for the 10-year housing plan.
Synthesized.
Yes. It was,
Yeah, so that 535 number, I think there are a few reasons why it may be lower than what you're expecting. One, it is a point in time, so it was 2 years old. The number's likely gone up since then. As she just said, it also excluded owner occupied short-term rentals, which was verified by matching the owner address to the property address. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but that was quite a few. Right, so that takes out quite a few. And there's likely a difference in geography as well. So that number, the base of it came from a software the city has for tracking, and they can only track within city limits. Those other reports are likely pulling from a broader geographic area in and around Flagstaff, which I do think is appropriate, actually.
The regional.
Yeah. Plan. So just to contextualize why that number may seem a little bit low. And I do agree with the sentiment that it may be worth investigating and figuring out the new revised number. If you actually want to use the same methodology to calculate that, I'll just offer it myself. I still have the sheet where I calculated it the first time.
Thank you, Tyler. So would everyone feel comfortable with me putting in a note to go back and see if we find updated data for this?
Yeah, and reference, when we have more than one reference, more than one,
Okay.
the dates. Peter, you said you had something else on the preamble as well, I believe? We're in the beginning section, the narrative. Susie was first.
Well, I have several things, but on the page 2, first paragraph, full paragraph after this extended period of housing, the last sentence in there says, there is a need for housing units at all income levels. Is that really true? Is there really a need housing for all levels of income? Is the need more low to moderate income residents? That's where the need is.
I mean, I can speak to some of what might be the intention there. I mean, I didn't write that sentence, but we do talk about the fact that actually, even in the high level occupations, we see higher turnover than one would anticipate and less retention because there's not the same housing stock available. Even at a medical doctor, for instance, salary, it's hard to find a place here that's affordable, but obviously low and moderate is much more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I would just change it to, there's a need for low to moderate income. I mean, moderate income people. Does everybody think about that?
I agree.
I'm gonna push back on that because I think Dave's point there is something that was in the housing plan, right? That kind of what we made clear, and it was one of my, favorite graphics is that, we have a gap everywhere, right? As we go up the different price points. And so I think, while probably a reflection of our, social responsibility to help those folks in the low and moderate income level, more than someone, like myself and my doctor. So my wife who's a doctor. We have a very nice house because, I built it, but, I think that's kind of, that's the idea, right? Is that we need to look at both market rate housing and subsidized housing to serve income levels. And that was kind of a key
So if you,
point in the housing plan.
if you look at the paragraph, it touches on everything. And then in the end, it lets us know that there are importance for all income levels as well. So it does touch on the affordable market rate burden.
I saw that, but it just feels kind of bizarre to think, that there's a need for housing units
There's need for housing for rich people.
for rich people. Yeah, it just feels kind of psychedelic or something.
I agree with the sentiment.
Agreed.
I kind of agree with the sentiment too.
But the paragraph, I don't think would be complete if we didn't include all.
I think the other,
Wrong.
you see it from a housing economics standpoint, this is kind of an issue that's studied when you have shortage of supply at the higher level income levels. Those folks then buy down, right? So then they're purchasing less expensive houses than they otherwise would, or smaller houses than they otherwise would, and therefore pricing folks lower down in the market out.
Not moving up, so they're not creating that.
Yeah, and so it pushes everything down, right? And then that continues down to the point of it, you can get people on the street because they're pushed out of the lowest.
So is that something we need to add to the parking lot, or should we vote right now?
I mean, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have argued at this point. Some meetings and such, and the housing program always says they want housing for all points. So even for $1 houses, and they're very, very firm about it. So we could vote on something, but I think the staff is going to change it.
Well,
That's just been my experience. I have that same psychedelic kind of response. Like, wait a minute.
So this reality is there.
I think David hit on some of the reasoning that the housing. And, Jennifer, maybe you could
I think
speak to that more, but that's my experience.
I mean, I think the takeaway is housing for all, not housing for some who need help. And it's a national trend too. We're not special here in the fact that we need a lot more supply distributed amongst all kinds of income groups, especially middle income too. It starts getting so exclusive when you start really pinpointing this income level and that income level only. Why? It's just easier to just say more housing all across the board because it's the most inclusive way to go about it.
I kind of like that, because I'm thinking to myself, no offense to anyone who might live in one, but don't really need another $6 million home in Pine Canyon. Yeah.
Way, it's like 180. We're hard way for them to have a house here,
To Jennifer's point, where'd you draw the line? You don't say everyone, then you're gonna put a line somewhere.
We'll say, if I can just jump in, that this housing program has been really clear about it's housing for Flagstaff residents.
Yes.
So it's just us saying housing for all, and then that includes second home, third home. It's for Flagstaff residents. And
That
so
would help.
that might fit in here and address some of those concerns, because I think that's, I'm always thinking about is for Flagstaff. There's a lot of second homes, so. That might
And
get
we
at.
say county residents, so we include the whole.
Talk about the regional plan. In the context of the regional plan.
Flagstaff.
Flagstaff region.
That region, that sounds better.
The idea is it's for residents, it's not for second home.
Do the policies, or we,
I think the policies, I think
are they
we've
saying,
kind of expressed our opinion and we've got information on this one that we can kind of go on.
Yeah, you wanna say something?
There's actually is. A new housing unit in all neighborhoods across the region. That's gonna need to be a little bit more expanded on at some point, but it does say that right here.
Diane, do you want to bring up the,
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up again, looking at the memo of reasons that some things were not incorporated. I was among the people who asked for a list of the systematic barriers to, are basically the list of what contributes to the housing crisis. And I guess I felt that there is a lot in here, and couldn't there be a call out box? There is a call out box as the current housing emergency has deep roots. But it seems to me if we have strategies we're proposing, couldn't we articulate what our assumption is, or couldn't a regional plan articulate an assumption about what we consider as a community the 5 most strategic things to do? Given that this plan goes over an extended period and there are going to be major investments to try and address the plan, it just seems to me there's just a lot in here, and it would just be nice to have a call out box that says, and in our region, we consider these the top things we'll work on without having to go into the litany of 100 different contributing factors.
where's the line between what you work on, it's in the narrative, and what the goals and policies are?
Well, that's what yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. And they kind of, obviously some things are chosen in the goals and strategies section. I would just like some affirmation or something that says, those of us that have thought about that, these are where we think the pressure points are. There's sort of, it's, as you said, passive neutral voice. I'm longing for someone saying, and we think if we do these next 5 things and this plan, it may make a difference. It's that clear articulation.
Getting the 10-year plan, like the strategy in there, be part of that, or?
It could be. I mean, I recognize here that in the call out box, there is the senior housing. So that's given that passing mention. I'd like to know what it says are the top 5 things we should be doing. Because I think when we are citing other documents, the probability of someone going back to that other document is very low. Number 1, right at the top. I go back for David to the meeting where you said, some of these strategies in your experience haven't worked, or that you are aware of that they've been in California. I just think we should clearly articulate what it is we think our assumptions are about the top 5 things to work on.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the part I struggle with, Diane, is because it seems like our policies and all the things that we're saying we should work on. I completely agree with the notion that none of this is as direct and as I would like it to be. All that's the nature of the document. But then I'm also hearing in what you say that there's, when you talk about the pressure points, right, that there's, right, we've got problems, which is part of what we're identifying in the narrative, and we've got solutions, which are policies and goals. And so I think we can more safely and clearly identify, right, like the top 5 things we think are
The goals.
no, the problems, I was gonna say.
Oh, the problem, yeah.
And that leads you to being able to be more clear about how you're implementing the policy. I think we got that sort of stuff because it's coming from the, housing plan and stuff. Good morning.
Yeah, maybe there could just be a paragraph saying the housing said this X, Y, and Z are the biggest things we're gonna work on. I don't know. I've never read it. I don't know anything about that report.
I mean, it was intended to be a very action-oriented plan.
Great.
So, and we ended up with a whole table of strategies that should be implemented in the next, if it's a 10-year horizon. So that's another thing, talking to Sarah Dector about, it was a little tricky trying to blend, what we've said and done and want in the 10-year housing plan with this much further out goal, policy, visionary kind of a plan. And so having these like super action oriented, like we're gonna work on these 5 things in the next, 20 years. And do that. It's just what we've already tried to do in this 10-year document. So I don't know if that's kind of counter to what the regional plan has been in the past, that policy goal, aspirational document, or,
Trying to make it less aspirational and
okay,
oriented, more specific. But just with the range of topics it covers and.
I can see it making a lot of sense. I know it can get a little call out heavy, but they seem so helpful though, these little side dot, bar things that say, yeah, I mean, we could figure out how to distill 5, like the game plan, like the
Right.
housing plan's game plan, and insert that in here.
Is it your main headings or something?
Yeah, I was trying to think of, I'd have to kind of sit through it and figure out if it's easy to just plop in there, or if it might be, so we have to kind of finesse a bit more, but,
Like that solution, is it, Diane's that kind of.
I like that,
okay.
especially since it comes back to another bit of hard work by the city to scope out the problem, so.
Yeah.
We already have the document. It's right there for it.
Yeah, that articulates what they think are the, whatever the number.
Get into. Yeah. So.
Actually, just for a second, can we go back to the line about housing at all levels? I just want to make sure that I record the right edit for that sentence. Did we want to have it read, there's a need for housing units for Flagstaff residents at all income levels, Flagstaff region residents? Is that something that we were still?
I don't want to get into changing specific words in paragraphs, I don't. So I think if you feel that the sentiment that was displayed by everyone requires a change, then you guys can decide to do that.
And if you feel really strongly about that statement, then we can put it in the parking lot as well.
Anyone else have anything in the preamble / kind of narrative section that they really want to sink their teeth into?
It's just a simple one. Under the housing, insecurity,
Okay.
it's where this little chart is, yeah. What's the paragraph above the chart? It talks, in the paragraph, it talks about, American Indian, Native households, Black, and doesn't mention Hispanic, although Hispanic is in the chart. And it just seems like there needs to be something in the paragraph to match it.
Yeah, that, since we put in, that was just a space saving, condensing the chart description, but it can be put in so that all of the groups are mentioned.
So say anything that only has 10 numbers in it doesn't really need a visual graphic. But. So anything else from anyone? Sorry, Michelle.
I think we have, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. On page 7. Just above page 7. So the sentence reads, The authority is part of the city of Flagstaff's housing section and operates 265 housing units across 2 main sites and a number of scattered sites as well as fee edges, other, I don't know, after as fee, I don't understand that part.
Just a typo.
He manages other 80 units.
I think that's referencing the Clark Homes development that the city of, the housing authority manages that. I think that's a typo. The fee should be deleted.
And that was something that should be changed to something that I could understand.
Michelle?
One of the things that I saw that was missing in this section is the fact that the vast majority of the city at least is zoned single residential zoning, right? And one of the reasons that we don't have as much infill in this middle housing complexes is because they're not allowed in a lot of residential. It's not really come out. Even though in the guidelines and such we recommend zoning changes. Doesn't make it clear. And where I saw it is, what popped into my head anyway, was reading top of page 3. Talks about large lot zoning. The majority of the region also results in higher land. That's where I started thinking, well, this doesn't address the fact that the way we zone the city is it, I don't know, I'm gonna say contributing to the lack of this middle housing. We don't allow duplexes and such in many neighborhoods. So that seems like it should come out in here somewhere. Right, because that's, I mean, we all know it, right?
That's a good point.
But it's not, doesn't say that specifically. And then that would help justify the looking at the zoning again.
Right.
I think it's good, important background to have in the housing section.
Couldn't, I imagine we would be delving into that in the land use chapter a lot. Maybe we touch on it and kind of, I'm wondering if we end up covering that in the zoning chapter, we can reference it here, like for a discussion of how zoning impacts affordability. See
If it's referenced.
But we
We're
have,
gonna
yes.
Yeah. With that, are you comfortable with that?
It's referenced and make sure that it's there.
Yeah, it gets in there.
Yeah, I just suggest that because I guess I wouldn't want us to head too far down the zoning rabbit hole
Yeah.
in this chapter.
No. I think it could just be a reference to the current zoning. Historic zoning or something. I wasn't expecting just that
Okay.
mentioned as part of the reason we have housing. Middle.
Okay.
Well, in this reading, it kind of, I mean, if I'm saying this wrong, Michelle, but it kind of downs the fact that we have large parcels and they cost a lot of money, but how there's a solution to break it up.
We talk about zoning later, but we don't talk about it. Zoning is an issue.
And you wanted to hit the fact that a majority of whatever percentage of land in Flagstaff is on single family, and that is missing from there.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And you talk about NAU in there, like that.
We have that data.
You do.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add to this discussion is that there's the code analysis project is ongoing. And that's identifying barriers in our zoning and our other codes to developing housing. So, yeah, I think that will be helpful information to put in that kind of waiting for a little bit. So, but that's point taken, yeah.
Without that being finished, we know it's an issue.
Yeah.
Ready, I'd like to try to get on to the goals and policies. So let's.
Sort of structural document, and I really like this idea of a cross-reference. I really appreciate that Sarah and the team want to minimize the narrative and the business at hand. But I think it's going to be important. So many times we just say, oh, that's going to be in this chapter, but when you're reading this chapter, it comes to mind. It's when I read this in the cost of housing, I also think about limited land availability in our region. And it just seems to me some footnotes through the document that say for a deeper discussion of this issue, refer to chapter 4 or something so that the reader doesn't think that, got it.
Yeah, but we are having a lot of land use and just different conversations within social and economic systems, which this chapter actually is. So it's also poignant, I think, to just kind of understand that these are examples of social and economic things. Not necessarily the answer will be another chapter to the housing issue, economics. Well, no, this was some of it,
Yeah.
some of it.
Yeah.
But if your point could add to those, point you in that direction, I think it would be well taken.
Couple very small things. In the middle of page 10, it says the city provides facilities and support services to help entrepreneurs. The incubator and accelerator on innovation. That's cool. I was just wondering if we could add a sentence on terms of it's done for us and how stable it is, as it persists. Just a little bit of more information, it's not like it's going to change things a lot, but.
You can put in there, gave David Hayward $20,000.
Oh, I've seen those buildings and I wonder, what are they doing for us and how stable? it is?
We did for Restoration Soils, my compost company, we were part of their sort of Shark Tank program, and it was great.
Just another time.
Climate neutrality challenge.
On the bottom of page 11, the last paragraph, delete the word unprecedented, it adds.
I oversee the incubator and the accelerator, and if you guys want a little more detail in there and it fits, I'm happy to provide it.
During the restroom.
Just a sentence, for us to understand what's going on.
There's section down.
Well, there's another.
We have one last chance to speak, and then we're gonna move on to.
Well, what we were thinking is if we could go through the goals and policies and if we can include those sections, include your questions into the goals and policies, because they might get answered through the through the goals and policies. And if they don't, then we have a list of everybody's name that I haven't circled yet in those sections.
Suzie?
Have suggestions for wording change?
I would say it's wording stuff, typos, things like that.
It's not typos, it's change in a word, but
Yeah, I think that's fine.
just tell her.
Yeah, go with there, and so we're not doing.
Well, isn't there a way that we can do that? Isn't there a sheet that we could do before we come to these meetings that edit, draft?
There's the review, and then there's also the opportunity to send me and Sarah and Melissa marked up comment that we can.
Fair enough. Let's get on to the good stuff.
In the preamble section, I have relatively significant problems with most of the system in the security section. But given that is the final goal and policy in the pieces, I think I can wait until we talk about that. My points out. So we're going to move into goals and policies now. Take a little restroom break in about half an hour. We'll get started on this. So we have housing supply and access is our first piece. And see, we have one goal in that, is that correct? Right? Yeah. So we have one goal AH. Which is maximize the availability of housing in every neighborhood. Housing, including health, equity, and inclusion.
I think it's a very important, thought on the first implementation guideline, said barriers and restrictions to the creation of multifamily housing and new developments should be identified. So it's saying it should be, I guess says they're going to be removed. I thought, are they there? I guess I'd like to know what those are. But
which is kind of to your point.
And I guess the fourth bullet made me aware of something that's very exciting that I think the city could work with. City should acquire and rehabilitate properties for affordable housing projects. Well, it's something that the city doesn't do, but those of you who aren't aware of it, Habitat for Humanity has a stupendous program. They're building these mini units and they're renting them to people up to 10 years and they give them all their money. So this isn't the type of housing like putting up alcoholics and people who can't hold a job. This is for people who are trying to work here and live here. And then in 10 years, they get all rent they paid, they can buy. So it's turning them from house people trying to stay in the workforce into homeowners. I think it's just stupendous. They've built, I think, 3, they're building 40 more right now. And then so over the long term, it's going to turn hundreds of families from people who can't afford to live here. So I just think this is a part, you know, how can we help them do this?
Yeah, and encourage that sort of.
It's just I think a brilliant, there is a thing I've never heard of anywhere in the country. And we're doing it here. We invented it locally. I actually went on the sustainable housing tour and Eric Wolverton from H4H was there and explaining that program. And it just made my jaw drop so much that I opened my wallet and gave him some money. I said, this is a great program, you know, move it forward. So I think we should do what we can to encourage this.
In the city, and we do have a section on page on guideline that's further.
So whatever we can do, and I don't know, maybe there's some rule against the city cooperating with an NGO to do this or something. I hope not.
So that's not, Paul, we have an implementation guideline, right? That's on the often.
But I think, you know, highlight this as something that's, you know, can get people excited about what.
We have one that says the city and county use of the community land trust model and some of the development, which kind of sums up what you're saying, right?
I can add to Habitat for Humanity, other housing nonprofits and market rate developers are all eligible for affordable housing incentives. So Eric doing his starter homes project, like we support them with land donation. I don't know if I should use the word donation, but they build their units, or they have built their units on city property. And we pay for certain building permit fees and, you know, water sewer hookups, stuff like that. So my perspective, the second implementation guideline really gets at that support by incentivizing and assisting those nonprofits with their projects.
Yes, my main point is we should celebrate what we are doing somehow. So this
Housing solutions is some amazing stuff too, right? There's a lot of actually really cool stuff happening out there.
Yeah.
So
We had a,
I want to go back to that first implementation guideline. I think I understand where you're trying to go. But the way it's written, anything that restricts the creation of multifamily housing could be read as being subject to this. And I don't think that's really what you intend. Your intention, I think, is to get rid of unnecessary rule regulations that are impeding. The way it's written, I think you could be used to get rid of all the restrictions.
Well, I consider it, yeah, I can super see what you're saying, Rick. I don't. Like from what experience I've seen with the way that these policies are used, right, at the city level, they need to be really direct if they are to achieve anything, right? So I think the notion that they would be able to turn around and suddenly get rid of all of our zoning regulations, right, regarding a certain issue, you know, is so far from what is possible that I'm more comfortable having something that's like this, that is like really, you know, gung ho, and I think like saying as part of very active and saying you must do this. And if we get 10% of the way there, then great. You know, I might think on the matter.
Related to that is that, for me, it's that word remove. That is very, very strong. That doesn't say modify, it doesn't say tweak, you know, it says remove, and I think that's a strong word. Because what makes me think of, David, is what the state has been talking about doing, like removing all the restrictions that cities have for housing and just saying, go do it without anything. We're not talking about that here. I think we need to be talking about that. Talking about changes rather than the word remove. Anyone else have that concern?
When we look at zoning updates at the county level, not removing, more about how to make things work. The X approach, what you're saying. You do it without thinking. This is a barrier, you identified it, get rid of it, and think through these things very thoroughly when you do it. I think fully support your opinion.
Like hack away.
Um,
Necessarily
I
want
mean,
it to be modified for sure.
And I think that this brings so much, this is such a highlighted part of the conversation is we're making a document for future people, people 10 years from now in leadership to look at and then identify what's important to them. And through this, they could, depending on where they sit, they could make it hard for us to develop the way we have been.
yeah, I don't know. I like the forceful language because we have so little of it. And then, you said identify the barriers and then get rid of them, which is what it says, right? Identify the barriers and remove them. That's the same thing.
We put that in a parking lot?
Ask a comment.
More discussion, because I'm sending out something that I sent out to Sarah just barely today, so I apologize. But I'd like to expound on that as well.
On this same point.
Yeah, it is right here. Just give it to us. But we could parking lot this.
Michelle McNulty was gonna do a whole presentation on the land availability and suitability and code analysis project, I believe your next meeting. Just some context for me, when I see that first implementation guideline, that is the mission statement essentially of the code analysis project that we're currently undertaking. They are identifying barrier, we have hired a consultant to identify various code barriers, regulations. And they'll propose ways, code, recommendations for how to
Remove the barrier.
remove the barrier, but with a different kind of a code or an amended, code requirements to enable more missing middle, denser housing types. So I think that discussion you guys could really get into that at your next meeting.
I like the MEDAX approach, but we can discuss it.
I mean, I go through the code and it's whatever, 100 pages too long. So if you took a meat axe to it, it would be great.
It would be so up to who's ever reading it. It's just, like you might have really good intentions, but someone else may come along and said, forget all that climate neutrality stuff. Forget all the safety issues. So I just think it just needs more discussion.
I mean, in some ways, it would almost be like where you can remove them without impacting another community value. Because really, that's what the code is all about, is protecting the community values. But I don't know how you ever do that.
You might need to change the word to modify. By them.
Good word, actually.
It's just a plan. This isn't a law. So
No, but here's my concern. I keep going back to what the state is trying to do. And they're trying to remove any, even if they are related to the carbon or other important community elements, right? That's how I see what the state has been trying to do. That's why this pops out at me. We just don't want it to be removed without thought, without consideration of other losses.
Well, I think that's the point, Michelle, right? Is that it's not going to be done without thought, right? Like, I mean, if you look at the amount of thought and planning and you know, an outreach that's gone into this process, right? There's gonna be the same amount that goes into code change process, right? That's coming out of the big consultant study. I'm not concerned that it's gonna be done in a sort of slapdash fashion.
Maybe someone could record that there is concern among multiple people with that word, that first whole.
Or just put it in the parking lot. We can talk about it again.
Pass it down to Sarah.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting. put it in the board docs too. And after we get that report that she just mentioned, but somebody gonna come and talk to us about it, or is that gonna be forward?
Yeah, I think that works.
No?
We'll parking lot it.
Yeah.
Implementation guideline and
Yeah, because Michelle, when I look at it, when I read it, I know the intention of myself and the intention of the city. But then when you talk to me about it, I think about other people in the future going, we could remove it, whatever. Let's just remove it all. Okay. Talk about it later.
hang on.
Yeah, next
Okay.
subject. Okay. Back to the goal, the way it reads, the part after the comma, where it says including health, equity and inclusion. It kind of didn't make sense in that sentence, but to me, those should be overall the whole regional plan. So it doesn't seem like we really need to have that there.
100% agree, Susie. I had the same thing in there. I mean, we've talked about equity and inclusion as being an overarching goal for the entire plan, so don't need to call it out. Is everyone comfortable in that? Last 5 words?
I have a comment. It's in the second bullet under implementation guidelines.
So we finished that, just that last. Everyone comfortable reading those last 5 words? Objects?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, implementation guideline number 2 talks about affordable units. The creation of affordable units should be incentivized. How are we using that word affordable in the? Maybe Jennifer, you can talk about this because yeah, I've gotten in trouble for using the word affordable housing when all I'm talking about is workforce housing. Affordable with, is it workforce housing? Is it attainable housing? Which one does this mean?
It is a tricky one.
So do we make sure we're clear in what we mean by our words in this plan?
We've had staff discussions about,
It's actually.
not like super in-depth conversations about that word or what we don't mean. So far, all I've wanted to make sure we do is define the word affordable as a housing payment that is 30% of household income. That includes all housing expenses like utilities, it could be a mortgage payment, all kinds of. So whether you're a millionaire or middle income or low income, spending 30% of your monthly income on your housing is affordable. And I mean, you're right. Yeah, there's little a affordable and then formal capital A federally regulated affordable housing programs. And I mean, we can get into a discussion of the difference. But
I don't,
but I think
I was just like, let's be clear on what we need. And I like your definition. I know it's further up.
I think it,
To underline that one and make sure it's defined somewhere or.
yeah, I wasn't sure. I assumed there would be a definition.
Underline it.
I think it needs to be highlighted as a definition because it's taken right from the HUD description.
Oh, yeah.
Too, yeah.
Great.
But that was, you underline that.
One question I had in here, implementation guidelines, the barriers and restrictions, right? So we're talking about our code. Incentivizing affordable units within existing development projects. Adaptive reuse and rehabilitation in the last 2, but we don't have anything about building new subsidized affordable units. Doing that, so.
That wasn't. The city was like planning to, like, I live right at, Brandon Homes, and they were gonna build a whole lot more. There's a lot of space there, and that is part of our plan.
It is, it's just, it'll take a while. It's called, the redevelopment of public housing units will be done using the RAD program, which is, I think it's an IRS tool, no, the HUD tool, for rental assistance demonstration. We've had a hard time making a lot of progress on that, because we would need a development partner to go in and start making a game plan for multiple city properties that have affordable housing in them, and propose a redevelopment that is acceptable to neighbors and the residents, and it'd be a huge outreach project. So it'll take us some time, but that is definitely on. We had a comment, I think, in our draft to discuss the RAD project. We might have to convince Sarah Dar how to talk about that. I think we do. I thought it was important to put something like that, the redevelopment of city-owned affordable housing units, in this document, because it'll take us, it won't be done for a while.
I mean, we're a 10-year, this is a 10-year plan, so.
As long as you can get it done in 9.5 years.
Well, it's looking forward 20 years. It does need to be either readopted or updated or at least every 10 years.
So I think Sarah's right. Sarah doesn't want to be tied down probably specifically to the RAD program, right? So
Yeah, I think we need to figure out, though, how to discuss the redevelop, like our intention.
Where to put it in the plan.
just increasing the number of units, right?
And put in a comment that says add an implementation guideline to discuss the redevelopment of city-owned. Projects, does that cover?
Yeah, with the goal of adding units. Everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Judy, go ahead.
Under the policies for those implementation guidelines, you've got the one, but that doesn't really encapsulate the implementation guidelines. I mean, it's like there needs to be another policy.
So you say which one, sorry?
Well, we're still on the goal, one or H.
Yeah.
And under the policy AH that's there is good, but it seems like we need another policy that encapsulates what the implementation guidelines were.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So there's, I guess that's kind of a little bit of a formatting stylish issue. I don't know. So we have implementation guidelines for goals and we have implementation guidelines for policies. Is that?
Yeah, I think the organization here is that there are broad implementation guidelines and then there are specific policies targeting specific issues that have their own implementation guidelines.
I thought the policies were based on how we get to the guidelines and the goal.
Yeah, I think
This policy is fine, but it doesn't go far enough as far as talking about what's above it.
It's not referenced, it's not going above, it goes below. So you've got goal AH and then you have the implementation guidelines below that, which are for goal. And you have policy AH1 and then the implementation guidelines for that are the two that are below that. The indents reference the things that are the piece above it.
Yeah, I mean, because, well, then the first goal,
I think it's something a clever designer, like when you're drafting the document.
Yeah, and so it does mean, it's a readability issue, I guess.
yeah, and I will mention, we did formatting a little simpler on this because we're starting to get ready to work with the writer editor, so we didn't want to create a lot of extra work for them to undo all the formatting that we were doing. So that's why it's a little bit confusing. I think the key here is if there is an implementation guideline that should be moved under a policy instead of applying to goal in general, we could change it that way. But I think when we were writing these implementation guidelines, we didn't necessarily find that they had a home under a specific policy and that it was easier to see them as applying to the goal. But we can certainly revise that if there's if there's some that,
This is very confusing to me then, because I can't tell what goes with what.
We can work through that sort of formatting issue and stuff. And we can kind of try and move through the, so we've got quite a lot more. We're gonna move policy A1 and AH1 and AH2. Does anyone have any comments on those? Well, I had a question, Jennifer. When we say the one in implementation guidelines in collaboration with local partners, the city should expand programs that strengthen protections and mitigate the negative impacts of evictions. Like, what exactly are we talking about?
That would have to do with a lot of nonprofit partners who offer eviction prevention services and funds that they can connect people with if they apply for them and kind of do that outreach. The city housing authority and our department do not directly do that. We don't do that work. So we are, I mean, I don't know if there's a way to. Yeah, I mean, when I read it, I knew what it meant. But yeah, and collaboration. Yes, we're very dependent on nonprofits to do that kind of work.
Do you
Take a
define that?
look at it.
Could that be defined a little bit better then?
Yeah, if you guys don't mind taking a second look at that one and bring on the list for a little editing. We move on to AH3 unless anyone was got a lot of stuff on AH1 and AH2.
H2, instead of saying, say incentivizing.
oh, sorry, just one second. Let me figure this out.
Somebody.
Could you repeat that edit?
Oh, just on AH2 policy, instead of saying by encouraging the development, I just suggest saying incentivizing development of a variety of housing.
And I don't think we can incentivize it. We can only encourage because of state law.
No,
Incentivize. You can't require, you can incentivize.
I would like to see in the third implementation guideline under policy AH2, a way to include the community model in a more inclusive way, right? So that when we have this notion of public-private partnerships and we have the community land trust model, to me, if we can find a way that covers both of those. So we're talking about community land trust, we're talking about habitat, we're talking about the CBG funds that like the shelter got for their affordable housing, kind of around, as opposed to just, we kind of have called out one specific model of achieving that and then have said everything else. Everyone all right with that?
The use of various models potentially including.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Doesn't
I
matter.
was just trying to wrap my head around it. I know I'm.
We want the word interest. That's important.
So,
We want the word land, the community land trust taken out. Partnerships taken out, but what Dave's.
Kind of broad. I don't know.
yes. So coordinate the use of various models. Alrighty. Move on to the next section, neighborhoods. The one that folks didn't have a huge amount to say about, it felt like. I mean, I have one thing is it's the same as that when we talked about equity and inclusion on that another one, right? That we've called out here specifically, whereas we said that in the beginning that climate, the overarching things. I kind of see why it's there because this is very focused on those issues. I'm just wondering if there's a way we change that so we're not contradicting ourselves.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about equity as a theme, I think that really applies to the narrative section a little bit more than the goals and policies in terms of we could have had an equity chapter, but instead equity is supposed to be throughout the narrative of each chapter. But I think when it comes to goals and policies, it is important to have equity show up frequently as its own goal. That what your question was?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I don't have super strong feelings about it. Anyone else got anything on this section? John?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on the phrase recognize the harm of exclusionary zoning. Okay, that seems to be a matter of opinion, depending on who you ask. I think better to state it as the effects thereof. I can tell you how sort of thing would have looked in our last area plan when we discussed zoning at county level. And statement that as a matter of opinion, I do not think belongs in something like this, especially if we're looking at the option of this as an amendment to the county's comprehensive plan.
So my understanding of the word of exclusionary zoning, as it's talked about here, is where it's also called redlining. And it's where you don't allow certain groups to live in that space. And I think it's pretty, is that not what we're talking about?
That does not change the effect of it. And what we were doing is talking about the effects of it, not the mere fact that it appears to be or has historically proven to be harmful. It doesn't work that way everywhere. And as I said, you got to look at this from the standpoint of how we approach it at the county level. It is not quite that way.
So excluding populations from within an area could be good or neutral?
It isn't necessarily always harmful. You can satisfy me with data that says it is universally harmful. I can buy that. As it stands right now, no, not possible.
Making sure I was understanding.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't agree, John. I think it's pretty clear that those assist programs of the past have had a, considerable on our community. I don't need to prove it every single time to make it something that's strong enough that we can put in there.
Like I said, that does not change my opinion. We're looking at the effects of it. And we look at changes that improve the situation. Global housing or land. Leave it at that.
I'd like to see the implementation guidelines for this whole section. I don't know if they were like written by someone else than the other ones because they're all passive with the verbs. But till the end of the sentence is just not how it's written.
You talking about the implementation guidelines or the?
The implementation guidelines for the neighborhoods and equity section.
Saying should be supported, say. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
This public support for affordable housing should be supported, right? It just says should be support affordable housing through.
Yeah, I think we did have a conversation in writing patient guidelines that the board should be sort of the standard because they are not necessarily legally binding. These are guidelines for how to carry out the policy. But I see what you're saying about, it could be rewritten as the city and county should support community-wide knowledge and understanding of fair housing law. Yeah, I think some of these can be rewritten so that it says the city and county should instead of in the passive voice, if
I
that,
would even, I don't know, I don't see it elsewhere, so that's part of the reason I really. If there is a overarching point of these are not legally binding things, just put that in at the beginning and then make everything. So it's. So I'm just super happy to see that we are actually specifically clearly noting, right, the things that we've done in the past that, you know, have been bad for large portions of our population and saying that we need to do about it.
Can I say something about the third guideline there? It seems like a really strange one. You're gonna do this to the neighborhoods that have demonstrated opposition to it.
Mhm.
There've been neighborhoods that demonstrated opposition to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Grand Canyon will not allow any affordable housing.
I think more clear opposition was the Schultz Cross corner, right, in which the neighborhood up there was very opposed to the addition of affordable housing on that corner.
It's kind of like, I want it, but not in my backyard. Exactly how most of the kind of relatively looking at things and at least in the development side. We want it, but over there.
Around quite a bit. John?
I might just suggest rewording that increased public support should be supported. I don't think passes the high school English logic test, so maybe something to the effect of revisit affordable housing outreach. I mean, if that's the intention, is to go back to those neighborhoods and revisit the conversation and revisit the conversation.
Okay.
is there, phrasing that, so increased support for affordable housing should be supported and conversation should be revisited and they.
I'd like us to nothing in this room, so let's take John's comment.
Okay.
And then you guys can take it
I
on.
just want to make sure that I capture.
Can send you a note. It's just simplifying it as well.
So can we move on to cost of development, folks? Actually, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. 5 minutes for snack and a pee, and we'll come back. Cost of development.
I like the cost of development stuff. There's a lot of.
Okay.
Already. Oh, I'm exhausted because I was.
Sure. Yes, it's you. Yeah.
How we can address it.
I was talking about how
It's made.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
This is exactly the kind of shit I'm looking to
by
Drafting, working. The old.
yes.
Sorry.
No,
Strategy.
you made that.
Everyone, we can take our seats and close up the conversation so we can keep on going.
Short stuck with, it'd be like a such.
Oh, yes.
I'm John, I figured you know you sit next to each other.
All right, we're gonna get started with cost of development. And I think about goal CD, which is a continuation of a goal from the previous regional plan that says diversify the city and county financial strategies to provide for needed infrastructure development and rehabilitation, including maintenance and enhancement of existing infrastructure. I have a couple of thoughts on this one. Julie's just.
I sure do. Been waiting to get to the cost of development. Okay, so the first one, it basically says, we need to look to other opportunities as a city county other than property tax and sales tax to pay for maintenance and new infrastructure. That's the gist of it.
Ending, I suppose.
That's the gist. Okay, and then you get into policy CD.1, which is make developers pay for it.
Yeah.
But I don't understand what fair and rough proportional share means. So when, I was like, proportional share, what's that? So, yeah, and I know, I wish I could remember why it's that way from the previous regional plan. We probably had an hour-long conversation about it and ended up there, and I don't recall that.
I mean, I can tell you what it's.
Rough?
No, the rough and the rough, fair and rough proportional share is a legal language that comes from a case called Nolan versus Dolan, or Dolan versus Nolan. Right? Isn't that right?
No, there's a Dolan case and there's a Nolan case, two different ones.
Two different ones. Yes. Anyway, so running guys. But anyway, so that, I mean, that's why it's there, right? There's a has to be this.
So are we getting to, is what we're asking for here, is it impact fees? Is that what we're trying to set the stage for in policy CD.1? Because the way that development gets funded in county and city, the developer has to pay for all of that, and that gets passed on to the buyer. So they're already paying for that infrastructure. So are we trying to say impact fees? Or are we trying to extend that to services?
Or is it a continue to require? Or is that what you're saying? It already is like that, right?
I just don't,
I totally get what you're saying, Julian. I had the same kind of reactions that like, well, the goal to me says we look at multiple things, right? So is impact fees a better way of doing some of these things, or is having special improvement districts another option, right?
right.
So, and you know, special taxation districts. So we've kind of put that in the goal, but then we said, let's find more strategies, but then we've only referenced one of the strategies in the actual policy.
Which is already in place.
Yeah, exactly, which is already there, as it shows it's from the plan from 15 years ago anyway.
Yeah.
I also question the word require on that. I thought we weren't supposed to use require.
If I could jump in on this, I think this wording is coming directly from the legal requirements, for the general plan, which I just put up here. So the phrase that is associated with cost of development is policies and strategies that municipality will use to require development to pay its fair share towards the cost of additional public service needs generated by new development. So rough and proportional, that's correct. That's a legal term. That's not in this particular phrasing, but this policy was constructed based off of the legal requirement.
Don, did you have input?
Yeah, I mean, not my area of expertise, but just reading it in layman's terms, policy CD1 and CD2 seem completely contradictory to one another.
That. Just stumped me when I got
So which part of it's done to, Julie?
that it's, well, now that I understand it legally has to be in there, now it makes sense as to why it shows up right here this way. There's the way our development works is the developers are already paying for that.
Yeah,
And it's just inconsistent with the rest of it.
yeah, I mean, knowing what I know about what comes down from the state in these regards, like, I think that it's, right, because you can read it as saying require that new development pays for it. But you can also read it that it says require that new development pay for a rough and proportional share and no more, right? Because if you didn't have that guidance at the state level, and if you didn't have a Supreme Court precedent, you could come in and say, oh, you want to build a new subdivision, you also have to do all the other stuff that's not fair and roughly proportional to the impact. Makes sense?
Yeah, and I guess it's not really one that we should spend time discussing because legally we have to have it in there. So it's what it is.
So I think like, the other part that I wanted, and this, because this comes back to something for me, was talking about, okay, like what implementation guidelines can we have in there that discuss, right, the other available strategies that have been kind of floating around in the, the planning department and those of us who apply for permission from the planning department of, other ways basically to pay for fair and rough proportional share, right? Other than just,
To reduce the burden, right? Like, or to reduce what that burden is.
I don't know if it's even necessarily reduce what the burden is, right? I mean, it's just so.
We've looked for grants to help businesses reduce what they're gonna have to pay by finding somebody else to pay for it. But somebody pays for it, not the taxpayers. Is that kind of what you're saying too, or?
No, it's not. It's, what I'm saying is that, like, so for instance, you take, if you have to put in a new sewer line that's to service a new development, there is a recapture opportunity, right, for that sewer line. So anyone who then taps into it at a later date has to pay back basically some of the cost. Does that? Don't have the same thing for roads. End up with situations where it's like, Woody Mountain is one of these, right, where one half side of it was developed, and so they kind of built one half of it because the other half wasn't really their problem. Whereas obviously it would make a lot more sense to be in a position where, that could be funded and then the rest of the money could be recaptured at a later date. And that, is a strategy that we don't have available, right? We don't have, impact fees kind of available for infrastructure as another, potentially an option, so.
I didn't know if policy was getting at that, but it's coming directly from the state.
No, I think the goal is, and that's what my point is, that the goal says diversify city and county financial strategies, but then none of the policies actually reference the creation of any of those strategies.
Financing that.
Whatever it might be.
It is.
Yeah.
Would it answer it if there was a policy CD3 that said, look for mechanisms like improvement districts? Maybe some other planning lists that would be used, or?
Yeah, that would, do it for me adding an additional policy.
How does the county, because you guys have, road maintenance districts and improvement districts. I mean, that's really the tool that the county uses for specifically transportation infrastructure.
Very few. So the road maintenance districts and improvement districts are something that are discussed, actually it's discussed in our current comprehensive plan that is being updated. But very, very seldom those specifically for road improvement and road maintenance. Do neighborhoods take us up on it? Take the county, provide that for themselves ultimately as a way to fund the improvement of the roads and maintenance of the roads. And these, of course, are private roads.
Mhm.
that would only be, which we have vast networks of private roads throughout the county. So it takes, community members who are willing to tax themselves, and 51% of the community members within a given area to say they're willing to tax themselves and create an improvement district. So there are a few DWIDs, drinking water improvement districts throughout the county, where they're basically able to bond for and fund drinking water systems, which was that would be the better example in the county of where improvement districts are being used, would be water.
Would everyone be comfortable with us adding a fourth policy in this section that discusses the other available financial strategies to provide for needed infrastructure?
Absolutely.
Cool, thanks.
John, does that help your issue?
Oh, I mean, I feel like they're different issues, so just
What's yours?
just a comment. Oh, I mean, I agree. It references financial strategies. You guys talked about CD1, but CD1 and CD2 just seem kind of contradictory to one another. I'm just not understanding it, but one seems to say make development pay and the other one seems to say reduce development fees.
For affordable and attainable. I think it's meaning it as an incentive. But I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's like the best, this, the topic of is cost of development the best category for it, or but it's part of our problem is how to assist in the delivery of affordable housing units. Where incentives are the way to go. Incentives basically mean money. Where do we get the money? How do we get, what financing mechanisms can we tap into to assist developers? Incentivize them.
I mean, if you have a 50-unit project and you can, take the capacity fees away for sewer and water, like you just saved a few $100,000. Yeah.
But and someone has to pay for that. Like Dan, Dave
Right.
was kind of saying sorry, I don't know, I don't call you Dan, but you were referencing that same thing where you're incentivizing for economic development incentives. Where does that cash come from though? Is it
We also had a fund that paid capacity fees for multifamily housing.
yes, we
Even those
have,
types of things.
yeah, the capacity fees are so expensive. But then what was this? The implementation guideline was talking about.
I mean, the implementation guideline makes the affordable housing incentive that it's about affordable housing specifically.
Oh, right, that it just says reducing, sustainably reduced development standards and fees. So that's kind of different than just coming up with money to pay on a developer's behalf, asking for a reduction in the fee itself. This is uncharted territory for
So you're saying it makes sense to you? Two different. CD1 and CD2.
They do.
Okay.
They do, yeah, but I do hear that something else is missing, like what are the tools? We're talking about different financial tools and options we should be looking at.
The way I understand it, policy CD1 is already a matter of public policy if it's not codified. We make developers pay because that's the law, right?
Yeah.
I believe it's codified. So why is it a policy here, especially when it does kind of contradict CD2?
Because they just said that the state says we have to put it in.
I thought,
It's because of the legal requirements for general plans.
that the goal was what we had in. It had to be in
The policy CD1 almost verbatim is required by the state. I think so. So
Abel, did you have something here?
I do, but I hesitate because some of the parking lot stuff is implemented and I have something that crosses implementation and housing. CD2 and then parking lot 3 and,
With CD2.
um, yeah. There had, I met with a bunch of people within our community and, they said there was contractors in there and those contractors said, hey, well, write on your board that we need to reduce the cost to contractors for, you know, their building plans, as well as the length of time it takes to approve those plans. So we wrote it down. And then this comes up. And they're talking about reducing barriers. That is a potential barrier. CD2 is supported. Now, CD2, it supports it by, you know, what we're doing is reducing costs to the people who are building it, potentially. 'Cause I don't know that we didn't do any research to say that. This was contractors saying it. Okay, so I put it in here and I said, can we go look at the costs that they're being charged in order to do this? And then lo and behold, here's something that says, let's reduce the costs. Okay, and so I said, hey, it supports this. And then not only does it support this on the strategies parking lot. And I passed this out, so you might have it in front of you. Find support for the suggestion in paragraph 3 above, strategies parking lot, page 18, bullet 12. It says conduct regular economic impact analysis to understand the comprehensive costs of area regulations and the cost of doing business. So somebody said it before I did, but dang it. And so let's include it in CD2 because it's saying that, you know, let's look at these costs. And then we're saying it again in the parking lot. And I didn't say anything about the first part because you asked it to go to parking lot. So I honored your request.
What I think I'm hearing is that there's a economic impact analysis to understand the cost of area regulations on the cost of doing business is like an important issue that you've heard around the community. I mean, it's something that I've heard too. I think that we've got it in the strategy section, right? Because the language conduct regular economic impact analyses is very specific. We've kind of made a promise to not be that specific. So, you know, if, you know, we're a little light on implementation guidelines in this section anyway. So, you know, if there was a way to rewrite that into something that wasn't quite so specific, we could get it in. Yeah, we could get it in there. Would that address your items on?
I think it would address contractor concerns. There's contractors in here, does it?
I'm more concerned on a larger development scale. So I hear you about the fees and contractors and doing per parcel, you know, a house, a spec house or something. And what I was talking about before was more land development in general. So what Jen was talking about earlier related to this zoning analysis and breakdown, see where, you know, affordability fits into that. You know, there are conversations related to, oh, do our streets really need to be that wide? Because that has such a huge impact on development. Those are big impacts. How much property is consumed by infrastructure and the extent of that infrastructure and the standards of those infrastructure. So that's how I'm reading policy CD.2. I wonder if this is something that we could put on the parking lot and maybe circle back to after that presentation from Michelle, because I think that's going to have some really good information and something's going to come out of that. We're going to see from that, hey, look, we need to revisit CD.2 or add another cost of development policy in here. I mean, I don't want to push stuff off, but I feel that there's more information coming.
Strategy rather than, you know, because there is strategies in this. We're going to do some of this. And one of them was a strategy just to look at as a part of affordable housing. Does that bring up, for the, all the money that's submitted, all the requests for developments, and will it have an effect? If the answer is yes, then we need it.
But the money's got to come from somewhere because those fees pay for inspection for public safety. So it's like those fees can't disappear. So who pays for it? And is that really where we're going to have the biggest impact on a housing affordability issue that we face?
We're legally required to collect certain fees. So some fees that we can't reduce, I think it's legal for us to reduce. I'm sort of speaking out of turn here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the development fees.
Capacity. Not like they're required. I don't know that there is ability for us to split the cost of like the water sewer capacity fee in half, just because it's an affordable project.
This still has to be paid for because there's still waste and water needs.
Right.
That's why we.
It's just really,
I think the fees that can be reduced are very specific to like community development, like building or like permit fees, like.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't need to get into.
And that's,
Yes.
yeah, I think
Specific
both
on
both
just-
points were heard and valid. Tina?
I think we really need to see that report. I feel at a real dead loss right now. Being on the side where I've been a developer and I was this developer and I don't have anything I can go to right now. Really to that, I understand impact fees like Julie. I don't understand all that, but it's a law. Really, I think until we see that report, we've got nowhere to go right now because we don't have the facts. So I'd like to see that, and then parking lot is a great idea because then we can go back and point what it is the concerns really are.
Yeah, because I
They
think,
can't change fees at the city. They cannot. There are certain things they just can't. What hurts the development most, I know this personally, is time value of money. It's the amount of time it takes to get everybody lined out. You're paying on a mortgage or you're paying on a development loan. And the longer it takes that loan to go through, you're paying on that until the development is done. That's the crucial part. I mean, but until we see that, I don't.
yeah, what's the opportunity cost of it? So
That's a big portion of it as well.
so I mean, I kind of like that. I feel like we've got 3 items in the parking lot that are all sort of the same, right? And are all coming out of this zoning analysis and the land ability stuff. So we should do that, then come back to these items and then see if there's a few more information items. So then on that note, we will move on to the healthy economy, is 808. All that, but we'll move on into this section. What are the things that jump out at folks?
Just wondered if this is a place to put in neighborhood nodes.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the right place, but I just don't want us to forget that. I love it.
I feel like it's gonna get in there because it's gonna be in the document that they're producing, right? I'm part of that zoning.
Because it's seen as sort of a
Very
building.
specific.
You're going for these concept, will certainly be introduced in a chapter.
Not this chapter, another one.
In the growth and use chapter, along with like the descriptions of neighborhoods and those sort of sections.
Reference it. That's too expensive.
Anyone else got anything on this one?
Only thing I'd say too is on policy ED5, you say work with partners, maybe define partners.
Yeah, I don't like that one at all. It doesn't feel like, I think before, that's just not a land use thing. sure, it's great, like 100% do it, but it's just got anything to do with land use.
You'd want to remove any? How do people feel about removing that one completely?
I wondered about it.
I don't see any objections. One is really call it NE five, right?
What's an ED5?
NE5.
I don't have to explain this.
Sorry, Dave, doesn't mean you don't get to still do it.
Well, no, I understand.
You're right.
I was thinking about how to try to explain that the city doesn't, yeah, I don't have to, because you guys removed it, so it's very convenient.
Easy.
We also remove the implementation guideline.
I think it's helpful for staff, and staff is looking for edits to this as well as putting more input to it. As more input is good, but also where we can also trim the fat would be good as well.
I think I will want to talk to Sarah to make sure that she doesn't see an issue with removing that policy, but I'll put in a note that the committee recommended removing it and make sure to follow up on that.
Well, I guess one question I would have is if there's a land use connection through, Coconut Community College would be an easy partner for us to work with to enhance the skills pipeline if expansion of their facility is part of its use. I guess I haven't been a part of what you guys consider land use or what the definition of land use is here. I could see ED5 turning into places where like pipe fitters. It's a school that's been interested in coming here. There's different trade outfits that are interested in coming here, and those would be places we'd be trying to find a footprint for them. Welding's training, that kind of thing. There's a new CDL site. That ties to land use in a way. I could see it, but in general, workforce development, which is what this is something that we look at more programmatically. It does require land. I guess that is the only thing.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Yeah, this economic systems though is social.
Everything else, right? Like if we look at the implementation guideline for policy ED2, for instance, right, it says entrepreneurship spaces and programs should be located in areas accessible to low and middle income residents. That's saying,
Where we're gonna.
how the connection to where we put these things are. I think to your point, if it was specific on that, then maybe.
I don't know how you guys have been looking at it. I'm fine either way.
Thank you for the input, Dave.
With respect to ED4, don't really understand why opportunity sites are limited to manufacturing and forest industries.
Yeah.
It seems to me, and this goes back to a conversation I had with you, that those are not the only two sectors that are that need land ability in order to stay in Flagstaff to be able to expand. So again, this gets back to that limited land base for certain economic activities. And so especially business related, and I think this needs to be a little more robust.
And you don't feel like the thinking around it is robust enough?
I think that there is more need for places to locate, or businesses that need places to locate that go beyond manufacturing.
And I'd agree. I think that we also know we need logistics and warehousing. I think the point here is in some ways, and I'm super comfortable with broadening it, is to carve out that it can't all be commercial and housing.
Right.
We need places for light industrial, research and development, heavy industrial, and maybe, I know we were looking at manufacturing and forestry because they tie to jobs and climate in a way that I followed, but if an easier way to do it would be, say, develop opportunity sites that support light industrial, heavy industrial, and research and development type opportunities. That might be an easier way to get there.
Support industries needed for jobs and climate resilience, such as, and then.
Yeah, I see. What you're saying, Dave, totally makes sense. And now that you explained like what it was trying to do, what you explained 100% makes sense. Do you agree?
Right, absolutely. So, yeah. And then just again, and this goes back to the process we're in, you're doing an economic development plan.
Correct.
And we've got placeholders for what might be relevant that we import into this document. I just don't want to lose that. I'm just, want to make sure if there is something that is in that economic plan that once again ought to be in a follow box. Because this chapter covers so much stuff with so little, but also it doesn't have the same, parts of it don't have the same depth as, say, like housing. So I just feel more comfortable knowing where we plan to import into here some of the hard work that's going into these other plans.
Right. Yeah, so again, so referencing back to the other stuff, which Jess was a comment that you kind of made. I think I'd also like to see if we, because, right, to me, so to make that connection to land use with policy ED3 and kind of rewording of ED4 that you said, it was how, so because the land use thing is, right, is making sure that we have spaces for advanced manufacturing, healthcare, astronomy, and bioscience to go, right? But also, if those happen to be our kind of target sectors at any given point in time, so I'd like it to be incorporated with ED4 and then reference, some of the as needed for, targets or whatever it might be, right? Because, we used to have other ones, we might have different ones, right? Like forestry and manufacturing and biomass utilization are things that have kind of gone up the ladder, right? Whereas, healthcare has kind of come down the ladder a little bit, so making it so that it just references whatever happens to be the economic development plan of that period. Does that make sense?
Yes, allowing it to evolve as the plan evolves, and the plans.
Yeah, so your plan can kind of change. Well, this one might sit here for 15 years, but you still get the opportunity to say, when you go in front of council, yes, please do this because we need space for X, Y, Z.
That makes sense.
Just to summarize, David, you're recommending combining policy ED3 and ED4 and including flexibility for the economic development plan?
Yes, along with what Dave said about referencing specific land use categories.
So I saw ED3 as more workforce development.
Yeah.
And ED4 is more physical opportunity sites like the 32 acres we just released through a ground lease with Gentera.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the point then as well as making sure that it has that connection to land use, right? So same as ED5. So if there's something that's.
Maybe ED3 and ED5 combined.
Yeah, if there's something that's employment related that's specifically about having a place to do it, right? And or ensuring that we're growing in a way that means that we can do that, then more. You've been writing these, right? So you've heard that someone could.
I didn't technically write them, but I did read them and I hear what you said and I can go back and work with Sarah to get it there.
Righty. Thank you. We've got the last one is the food one. And I think we've decided, right, all our popular items were coming back to at a later date, so this is our last one. What's everyone's thoughts?
Michelle likes it. We don't like it.
Hate it.
I love it. I love it a lot.
Tell
me why you hate it.
Hate it because of a multitude of reasons, right? I wouldn't use such strong language if I didn't have many reasons to not like it, right? So, my first reason is I believe that here because we have city to study this.
We have a community that supports it.
Well, I don't support it and I'm part of it.
I mean, community input, a significant amount of community input throughout all the stages.
So right, so I don't believe, right, so my belief is that that is not the driving factor. Anthony, my belief is that the driving factor is, it's a truth of the way that, governments have to work, that we go out and look for grant opportunities, right? And we get some of them and we don't get all of them. I was involved in sustainability, 2 other different ones, right, with my composting business that we did not get. But we got this one, and so now it's here. What's that?
I think it's bigger than that. I think the whole state is moving.
And I see that as well as like another problem I have with it, right, is that it's a kind of trendy thing, right? So it's an item that's kind of trendy in, sustainability circles. Just like food deserts were a trendy thing, whatever, 12 years ago. We haven't done anything to change any of that. My other continued issues with it, one is that, we are not a region that is suited to agriculture. We don't grow stuff here because it is very hard to grow things here. So we ship in our food from other places. Like if we're talking about it on a sustainability level, like, should we all live closer to farms and places where we can grow food? Like maybe, sure. But we don't, we live here. And, I have my biggest kind of problem with it, right, is that it is taking an issue that is super, super important, which is that, we have folks not just in our country, but in our own community who can't afford to buy food. And we're the richest country in the world. And we're saying that the solution to that problem is greenhouses and community gardens and farmers markets. And that is lumping a, quite frankly, like a rich, white, liberal, solution onto a poor population who can't afford food, right? Like, yeah, I love going to the farmer's market as a self-identified rich, white, liberal. Like, you're not shopping at Dollar General because you can't get, okay, or because there isn't a community garden close enough to you. Right? You're doing it because you're poor, and to me, like that's the main reason I have a real problem with this, both of this policy and the portion that was in the narrative. Rant, Anthony.
So the reason that I stand on the other side is because I was probably screaming directly into the echo chamber that talking about. The community input that I got was from 2 people or 2 groups that themselves from this through going to farmers markets. And they might not see it exactly the same way as David explained it, but I really appreciate your honesty because it's kind of the truth. But yeah, coming from community gardeners, one outside of the city and one in, I think is located in the city, just south of the city, but still in the city limits, if I'm not mistaken. They thought that it was nice to see this as part of a regional plan, something that they've been working on for a long time and hadn't got any credit for, or gotten anybody else to jump in the game because they felt that it wasn't represented enough, that they were finally getting some representation. And it wasn't just those, well, I guess it was just those folks and other people that are participating in community gardening that I was speaking to. So, yeah, I was speaking directly into the echo chamber and it was coming back very positive. Happy about this. They were happy that there was some representation. I don't have a whole lot more input than that because my interactions were limited to the people that I could reach out to and that reached out to me personally. As far as the depth of it is concerned, like the amount of stuff that's written about it, I liked the detail, but I think we could, shorten it quite a bit. I would like to keep it in the plan. It doesn't have to be detailed as it is. Other folks might have other arguments. Both sides.
I run a couple of groups. Sunside Neighborhood Association, one is different classes, coffee classes to gather information. And it's a real popular thing. It's a real popular thing. It's not a passing fad. Now, you're right. It's difficult to grow here. I know. Farmed potatoes in Donny when I was 16. You know, and I was black from head to toe. Some of that's coming back. Some of you guys remember the patches, the uh, Halloween patches that were north of town going, you know, just before you hit the peaks. Some of that's coming back. I don't think it's a fad. There's chickens across the street from my house that, you know, it's not a passing fad. It's been going on for about 10 years and getting stronger. Maybe because there is food insecurity. You know, I can only think that. And I'm also one of those middle class white, you know, Americans that, and because I don't do any of that stuff, but I see them doing it. And the people that are talking to us in the neighborhoods are talking about it too. I'll get off my hat.
I'm just fascinated, but you said, first thing you said, David, is reason you feel like it's in here is because there's a grant associated with it. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the city got a grant from the EPA, I believe, is that EPA grant? To do a study on systems.
Drove in here, you might have passed one of the city's newest properties that has a compost thing and also a bunch of different plots just right next door to us here. Probably speaking to that too.
I believe Genevieve, saw her raise her. He wants to elaborate a little bit about the grant.
Yeah, hi everyone. Genevieve here 3 in the Sustainability Office. Yeah, the city did receive a grant from the USDA to do a food systems assessment that started in 2023, and it's a 3-year project. So some of the results as they relate to land use make sense to go in the regional plan. And so there will be some more information about that soon. I'm not in the food systems section of sustainability, so I don't want to speak to this as an expert, but my understanding is that, yes, it's hard to grow things here, but that there is a role of local food production in addressing food insecurity to a certain extent, knowing that, yeah, we can't grow all our food to support our population here, but that doesn't mean there isn't a role for local food production as well as manufacturing and lots of other kind of parts of the food system. And then the second part is that my understanding was that there is, and also you can probably speak to this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in public kind of input in the regional plan prior to this phase of the regional plan, there was quite a bit of support for including more information about food systems in this version of the regional plan than the previous one. So I believe that's why it's in here. And if anyone has further questions, I'm happy to field those afterward and definitely put you in touch with the food system folks in the sustainability office.
And so briefly, before we move on to Michelle's comment, I wanted to just mention that Flagstaff CSA was one of the first places that I got connected at a time when I was really low economically in my life. I had to use food stamps. I was able to go there and get fresh food that was gone.
A health issue too. I was just gonna say that it's related to resilience. It's related back, it all goes to the plan and building resilience. So food security is a big thing. Saw more of that during COVID, concern about where the food is coming from and if it's blocked or no longer able to up the hill, you know, we're very reliant on that, right? So if we had some level of food security, sustainability here in Flagstaff, that makes us more resilient toward climate change or next virus or whatever the other things are. Add that to it.
You know, this reaches over into other areas. I used to own a restaurant and Shamrock Foods was one of my providers. And they tried to get a warehouse of foods up here, similar to the big ones they have in Phoenix. And basically it was denied. So they were wanting these big trucks to be hauling food up here so that, to be able to better obtain food. It's not only shipped up here for our usage, because we're a main hub, central hub, and it goes everywhere. but it was gonna be a main hub here. And we feed a lot of the reservation as well. So, it's more than just gardens that are.
Yeah, and I really like that. 'Cause I mean, that's the part that really jumps out at me as being really don't like way the part about community gardens and urban farms are gonna be the thing that solves the fact that people don't have enough money to buy food. Like that just doesn't, just hits me.
But the CS thing, the same thing was really, be able to be like, just on food stamps and be able to get fresh grown stuff all the time is really a treat every month. But did you just have a problem with the density, like, in there, or did you?
I feel like, so the sections, right, that are in the implementation guidelines, this number 2 and number 3, I'm kind of okay with. Community gardens and urban farms part, I'm not. We have plenty of those already. We've been doing it for 40 years. You, Anthony, we don't need to further it. And, you know, I think another like thing that came in for me, right, is that like what I really wouldn't want to see is another community garden going where housing could go. Problem for me, right? We put it in, we've had it happened right at where this building used to be located, right? The community loves it, right? Like who doesn't love the idea of a community garden? It's a great idea. You know, it's wonderful, but when we focus too much on stuff like that, that makes us feel good and don't make difficult decisions about things that actually help people. And, you know, we end up in a situation where it's like we have parks and community gardens.
I would say that I don't think that one of the pollution guidelines says that, but it should be more important than housing. I also think the urban farm, I understand what you're saying about community gardens, we have a lot of them. I don't know if there are in the region or outside the city, but urban farms are kind of I think there's only one, and then the McAllister Ranch is the newest one, which is really close here, whatever direction I am. And that is, the idea is to produce lots of food and get that to people who don't have access to it at a much lower price. So it does what it's saying here about where food insecurity is prevalent. So I think the urban farm idea is different than the community gardens. It's much larger scale. It can be managed by a company and actually produce a lot of food.
I just don't believe it. So I don't think that place next door is ever gonna be make a meaningful impact in our community. And I think when we focus on stuff like that, it makes us feel good about ourselves. And so we don't focus on the issues that are harder to address, right? And then make difficult decisions about what would improve our community.
What is your suggestion to the implementation guidelines then, David? I mean, are you saying delete, should instead of
I think
should?
it needs more work. Like, I think the whole policy and the section in the front, it's more work through what the folks are doing at the, you know, as part of this food systems piece. And so they can get into a better understanding of what is, you know, causing food insecurity. Is it, you know, is it that we don't have the distribution mechanisms that we need? I think that they have reached some conclusions that are not ready for prime time. And we're including them in this plan that is now going to be looking out, you know, 10 to 15 years, and it feels like it's jumping the gun.
Doing that a lot in drafts, about things that haven't been finalized, right? Economic development plan, workforce plan, we're having to do a lot of that. Do you know when this is gonna be, when this plan is finalized? I know it's 3 years and they thought they were gonna have a report. in a year.
Yeah, I think I would pass that to Genevieve if.
Yeah, hey, Michelle and Elsa. So I believe that there will be a lot more information available later, maybe in the summer. So I understand where you're coming from, David. There will be more information that will be included, and we know that this part isn't finished yet. And I do believe the food assessment does talk about some of those distribution and other issues having to do with food security. So don't disagree that there can be more information on there, and I think that is the intent, to have that be included in future drafts.
We'll say, just as a piece, I know it doesn't, we have like a history of food production, and it's an area where I'm not sure Joy Cone meets the needs of, nutrition. But they have been a longstanding part of the community. Nestle Purina also creates food. It's not for humans, but they're actually a big part of our community. 8 breweries is considered food production. And I think that those aren't necessarily what we're talking about when we talk about greenhouses and growing spaces, but under food processing facilities, we do have a significant number of jobs that relate to that. And then some conversations I've had recently about how ranching is actually a significant area around us. We don't have the processing plants here. And so we have all this cattle and all this sheep that's produced right around us, but then ships out to go get processed. And maybe there's room somewhere in the next 20 years to get a localized processing facility where actually we would have fresh meat that's local. I tend to agree that I don't think it saves the day in terms of that kind of stuff. And it's not my opinion that matters here, actually, because the committee's opinion that matters. But I will say that when it comes to food production, we do have a history of it. Again, Joy Cone's not necessarily providing nutritious food for children. It's so tasty though. But it does provide a lot of great jobs. And I think there's room for us to even enhance the systems we have, if that's helpful to the conversation.
I might like to just propose as a compromise that if the policy were to stay as written and implementation guidelines 1 and 2 were removed, implementation guideline 3 seems pretty general and encompasses less specifically what's in 1 and 2. So we all just live with that.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Say again?
We left policy ED6 as written, removed implementation guidelines 1 and 2, and kept implementation guideline 3, which seems to cover the same things, just more generally.
Look, Julie?
Can we strike improve nutrition? The policy. The righteousness of nutrition.
Can you elaborate on that?
Is a strawberry grown here better than a strawberry in Phoenix? No.
I think the idea was it would be.
It's not about nutrition. Nutrition doesn't, I don't think nutrition has anything to do with, and to Dave's point about brewery or dog food or ice cream cones. I don't know if nutrition has a place in policy.
Just support food security and jobs in the region.
Michelle, what did you?
Yeah, I don't agree with removing the 2 implementation guidelines.
I like the first one. It's fun.
I think zoning is absolutely important. That's a land use issue. We have to figure out where we're gonna grow this food. And not just the city.
And yeah, just to kind of reiterate that and what we're talking about, our ranchers have said that there isn't a processing plant here that they can utilize. That'll get shipped out, and then what comes back is, sold, but there's definitely a need among our ranchers to have that processing plant. We don't have one. There has been trying to get approval for it, but don't have the right location, the right zoning. Actually, I think we need to update our zoning ordinance. I don't think we actually include that as a land use right now, so that.
I'm totally fine with that portion of it. What I'm not fine with is saying that we need to turn over our valuable land for urban agriculture. I don't see there a need for more agriculture than we currently have within the regional plan boundaries.
Disagree with that.
Just elaborate a little bit more. So county zoning code allows agriculture in every single zoning district. So that's just a given. And it doesn't, take away from any other kinds of ordinances. It's just
it's a compatible land use with most other types of land use, not all.
Also as in our lowest density ones within the city. No. So the fact that we have something that's currently already allowed us to do it and we're still not doing it, just kind of, I think, furthers.
I think, talked about another. In the report, why don't we just wait to see what come up with? You know, instead of tossing things out at this point. I'd like to see what they come up with in terms of, you know, up a bit. But I think zoning is absolutely critical. We talk about zoning and farms, for instance, and agriculture.
Well, I just, having, you know, going through this whole discussion, it's not a mutually exclusive event to talk about local agriculture. But I do think there's inadequate attention to food insecurity. And, you know, you look at this last bullet from the narrative, it talks about that we have food recovery programs present, but capacity should be increased. But that bullet didn't make its way to an implementation strategy. So it seems to me if we have people hungry in our community, obviously just local gardens is not going to solve that. So what are the other things that we're not notating here or observing here that need to go on the plan?
And to everyone's point and back to the housing report or yeah, it's just too soon to throw stuff out. Not really for us to do that until we have facts. Understand that housing is critical, probably number one in Flagstaff right now by far and away. Food's not too far behind. Most people, my own sister lives in city, she's got chickens. When COVID hit, she was the only one with eggs for the family. Not saying we're all poor, but hey, you know, people's insecurity since COVID really hit home on food. And if we pass that over, we're gonna get hit back real hard, I think. So we're gonna have to just see what comes. Parking lot it, whatever we gotta do, but we can't throw things out at this point. So, I think Melissa, you said something in the county.
Oh,
Zoning or part of the plan that
couple
calls
things.
out for it.
Right.
It calls out something about agriculture, right?
Well, agriculture is just allowed as a permitted use in all zoning districts.
It's
So
just
it's already allowed. There's actually a zoning chapter relating to how many chickens you can keep, that kind of thing, so.
So
But no permits needed, it's just allowed.
to add to what Melissa said a little bit, given what we do in the county, these implementation guidelines you see here are exactly the kind of thing that we would look at planning and zoning commission when we establish conditions may be necessary for that type of use in the county. So from a land use perspective, zoning perspective, this is all valid stuff you look at. Regardless of the two opposite points of view, I've got to look at it that way. Can see both sides. He was talking about, what else seems to be talking about, but nevertheless, look at that. Look at the use, how it affects the neighbors, structure, supported, sort of thing. So from that perspective, I would support keeping that in there for that simple reason alone. Or modifying it appropriately, the case may be, but nevertheless, it's something we look at the county level.
So I think that where we're at then is, we're coming up on time, is let's take this policy ED6 and its exclusion removal or change and put that in the parking lot until we can, if and when we get more information on the, this thing's called the food.
We'll get more information, and we didn't take other things and put it in the parking, like the economic development. things. I don't think it should go in the parking lot. I think it needs to be revised just like other parts of the plan based on this new information. I'm afraid if we parking lot it, it's gonna die. Put it back in. I'd like to keep it in and then have the staff modify it when the plan.
I mean, we're doing the same thing we did with the other 3 items.
The other 3 items are parking lot.
We're gonna come back and discuss them later once.
It's different than parking lot in my mind.
I would say in this case, because there's disagreement and this might be something that we would want to formally discuss again. I think it makes sense in the parking lot. I think in terms of the timing of the plan, and thinking about when we would have a final draft, because it has to go through a review process, it is something I'd want to confirm with Genevieve about how we could have that, what information would be ready by the time we were ready, the draft, the internal review, which would be like earlier than the August that we're reviewing.
I just want to say that this agreement I've heard is one person. That mean everyone else, the other people disagree with that, or I feel really strongly about this one. I think it's really, really important for us to have for our future. So I don't want it to be portrayed as a disagreement when it's one person and I've heard multiple other people speak in support of it. So saying.
I guess, I've been quiet because David's been so vocal. But I really not at all sure that the community gardens and urban farms are planned in terms of trying to improve food security. Really doubt it. Haven't seen I would like to see a number. I've heard this assertion before. I haven't seen a single number. So it seems far-fetched to me. I've seen people in community gardens and I think they benefit from it. It's a wonderful activity. I enjoy it myself, but to say that I'm contributing to food security, I think is me trying to put a nice drapery on my.
Talking about something much bigger. It's like, maybe we all need some education.
Maybe so.
I feel like I've had a lot of education on this because my husband is totally into this. So I live with someone who's passionate about it. And, I feel passionate about resilience, about climate resilience. That's why I feel very strongly about this. So perhaps we need some education, perhaps work when it comes out, perhaps someone from the food section could come and talk to us.
I don't think it's gonna die in the parking lot, Michelle.
As long as it doesn't die in the
I
parking.
don't think it is, not with.
Development shouldn't die in the parking lot. We're not gonna let it die in the parking lot, so let's champion our parking lot items.
I think it needs to be revised based on information.
I think it piqued a lot of people's attention and that I was interested in to look more into it. I mean, back with.
Parking lot review does wind up on the agenda, so we are going to just looking.
Do like a whole review. It's like a session.
Exactly, right? So, okay, so Michelle, are you okay, comfortable parking lot? So that brings us to our conclusion, and amusingly, Robert, the next is the review of the parking lot. Also, this is items from previous meetings.
Yes, and I can go through this pretty quickly. The point here was just to check in and make sure that everyone's aware of what's still in the parking lot. Yeah, let me. Okay, so like I said, I'll try to go through this quickly and we will be having more in-depth discussion on these topics. We're finishing the final draft. Some of these are already involved. Okay, so the first issue was wildlife preparedness and response. Pierce raised this issue. It's a public safety topic that will be part of meeting 10, which is the significant natural resources map. We've had meetings with a small group of committee members and some agency partners. And Sarah and I and Melissa are getting that data together to produce a map. For the resource protection overlay, this is one that there's been 2 meetings on this, one of which was an info session and which was a site tour. And I would say that this is a somewhat resolved issue unless to that.
What do you mean by resolved? 'Cause when I was talking to Tiffany, I called the planner about it, she was like, well, now we have to write it. Now we have to write the revision, so.
I would say the aspect of it that's resolved is that, so the way this was brought up in the regional plan is that there was a statement in the resource stewardship and resilience chapter that the resource protection overlay contributes to housing and affordability and wildfire risk. And there was an implementation guideline to refine the resource protection overlay. And that was the extent of the guidance in the regional plan as it is right now. And I would say that it seems that the people that met in this small group would continue to support that or would not object to those 2 mentions of the resource protection overlay in the regional plan.
Just the devil's in the details, right? How do you guys feel about it, the other folks on the field trip? Man, Rick? Would you say it's resolved?
So a group of us went out for the significant natural resources map and the resources protection overlay last week. And sounds like there's some major work to be done on the RPO because in terms of affordability, it's huge because what we saw are the way past RPO in the past and the trees that are left have severely impacted developers' ability to achieve their densities. And so I think what we found was that there was, at least at a conversational level, general agreement that needed to be revised. Now,
Yeah.
how that gets revised is yet another matter, but it's still open for revision.
Sorry, I think I misspoke with that. I don't mean that the resource protection overlay is not an issue. I just mean that the direction from the regional plan that we should revise it doesn't seem to be contested by anyone here.
Yeah, we all agree it needs to be.
Right, but.
Charlie, you saying you don't agree, or saying you don't agree with that statement?
No, I'm trying to get it at, what does it actually say? What is the refining mean?
Yeah, that's,
Refining means get rid of it altogether or get down to like 10 trees per acre or something.
I think she's looking at it at like a 10,000 foot level. We're looking at it as, yeah.
That's exactly it. So I'm just asking, say it's resolved, what happens up there? Does it stay in the parking lot until it's actually resolved at the finer level that I'm coming from?
so it would, let me find the implementation guideline that mentions it. And yeah, this may be something that we back to, because I don't want to
In
take too much.
terms of the regional plan, yeah, it's gonna be refined, so we can move on, but
Yeah, it's still pending.
it's still pending in my mind because we haven't worked out any of the language or.
Yeah, I don't think the intention is to put these specific revisions into the regional plan. So what we have right now as an so it's under this policy, incorporate the protection, conservation, and restoration of significant natural resources in development, regulations of property acquisition, particularly sensitive and uncommon habitats, and landscapes that support the health and resilience of regional wildlife and plant populations and ecosystems. As an implementation guideline under that, further refine the City of Flagstaff resource protection overlay to prioritize the highest value natural resources in the context of efficient land use and hazard mitigation.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. I just didn't understand how you were. And what happens to these, so.
Yeah.
So that comes off the parking lot, but still stays on the city's issues to deal with.
Yeah, that's how I describe it.
Thank you for just clarifying. My brain has been at the details for a while.
I appreciate asking for that clarification and making that point, yeah. Okay, so we had a topic about wording related to historic preservation guidance and the role of other agencies and organizations, which John brought up. Sarah and John had an individual discussion, and currently the decision was not moved forward with changes on that topic. Paul raised an issue about adjusting the map. We had open spaces. Oh, sorry, yes. Paul had a topic about updating our map to include public land with recreational amenities in our open space map. And that's something that is in progress. We are looking at that, combining the foot system map and an analysis that they did with identified parcels.
Yeah, I don't think it should be hard, and as I recall, it just city map failed to show some big areas of city land that are used by people.
Wasn't there working on it?
Yeah, it's.
You're working.
Walter brought up a topic related to search and rescue, and that's something that discussed in meeting 10 on the infrastructure and public safety chapter. Walter, so the next couple of comments are from the current energy meeting. There's another request from Walter for GS information to be shared with I believe that was the Flagstaff region's water supply. And that's, yeah, we were working behind the scenes to set up an informational session on that. And yeah, so stay tuned on that one. There's also a suggestion to include future water demand by source and some sort of different ways of showing that with pie charts from that chapter. So that's ongoing. I think these water and energy topics are likely to come back to you in the form of the final draft. So especially the next few really have something to do with kind of balancing content between chapters. So there is an item about tracking how springs are mentioned. And that's the same is true for biomass storage. And also reviewing the resource stewardship and resilience chapter to include content on carbon removal and biosequestration. Tom Pearson requested a call box on the energy transition. That's in progress. Let me see. And then
Could I ask a
also,
question? Was the land for biomass storage, was that linked to the ED item that we just kind of removed where it said create opportunity zones for forestry and manufacturing? Are we sort of walking away from that, or is that somewhere else? Those are separate.
Came up, it was again, it's funny, these things intersect, right?
That's the,
And so it was in a previous chapter talking about the need for land for industrial uses.
okay. Thanks. I just want to make sure we didn't like, I'd remove something that was specifically asked for earlier, but I'm sure you got.
No, I think it falls into right that, how we're talking about rewriting that. It's all of these possibilities, right?
Thank you.
we can definitely make sure that when we're looking at the policies that we consider this parking lot item as well. Yeah, and then this last bit was just that there were some comments from someone from the public about the water chapter. And because we didn't get to them in the meeting, this was put in the parking lot as a suggestion to evaluate them, and if any are considered to include by staff, that we'll track them in the final document. Make sure that you're aware of what was changed. So this is the current parking lot list, and then I will add these 4 items from this meeting as well. So that was all I had on that.
Cool. Thank you. We do have some time for public participation. There are 2 folks here. If you really have something you want to say, you're welcome to do it.
Hi, I'm Abby Buckham. I'm a
labor historian and archivist in the area, and I'm on the Heritage Preservation Commission, so I am here in their capacity. Thank you for letting me live in, and thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. You know, kind of for us, what we want to do obviously is to preserve the physical and cultural integrity of Flagstaff properties. And we obviously know that development is an issue. We don't necessarily want to see anything get demolished to build a new apartment building or something like that. But we do what we can with our grant money to help local businesses and homes stay in the area. We did just approve a grant for a home on Cherry Street to have fireproof siding. So we are a local resource. We do try to help, you know, maintain these homes, maintain these businesses for people in Flagstaff to live and work. So we do what we can. I know that we're small, and obviously you guys have much bigger issues than just what we do. On a first kind of off topic, I work for the county recorder's office. And I do know that you were kind of saying something about agricultural being, I don't know if I misunderstood, is a kind of allowed to have the zoning. Is that kind of what you were saying? So I have noticed in a lot of our older, well, not even older documents, a lot of neighborhoods have conditions, covenants, and restrictions that are very limiting on agriculture, especially livestock. I don't know if you guys are aware, I just thought I might mention it in case that is or is not helpful. But yes, thank you so much. And we like to be a part of the best future. We're always looking to what we future and we just have to be part of the community and help them manage the difficulties that come with being historic property.
My name's Tyler Denham. I serve on the Housing Commission, though I believe I'm here in a personal capacity. And the comments I'll make from here on in a personal capacity. I loved the conversations and the debate. I did make a few observations as the conversations were happening, and I'll just walk through those really quick. One thing at the beginning of the meeting, there was kind of a debate over the form of housing, and just my observation, I think there were two separate debates going past each other. One was about who's buying the homes, like is it low income, working class, high income residents? And the other one was about what's being built. And I think there was concern about that first part of the debate because yes, we don't really want to be in the business of discriminating against who's buying homes. But to the other side of that, there is input here on what types of homes are being built. And I think what that group was saying was we would rather see like smaller units, more modest homes being built. Just an observation. Another point. On the section about the healthy economy, there is something that was missing. I was surprised by because when I think about land use and a vibrant economy, the first issue that comes to my mind is overly strict bans on home-based businesses and neighborhood commercial. That's a big issue because when a lot of people are starting businesses, their home is where they started. And I don't know exactly to what extent this is true in Flagstaff, but in many other places I know that there are like these overly strict regulations that prevent people from starting businesses, working out of their home that are unrelated to nuisances that are justifiably that you would want to control. And then of course, neighborhood commercial, like I think this actually did come up in a indirect way. There was a discussion about, we want to make sure that it's not just like a commercial area and a residential area. We do want to make sure that like this nice, healthy mix. Yeah, and I didn't really see anything about that in the healthy economy, so just food for thought there. And the final thing, I wanted to check on page 2. The second paragraph, there's a note about an undersupply of 7,900 units. I just wanted to check, when everyone reads that sentence, it's pretty obvious to you that that was like a estimate, right, from back in 2022. Because I feel like I have sometimes heard when that number comes up, people assume that's like the current number projected out forward, when really that was just a point in time estimate. The sentence, you can read it that way, but I just wanted to make sure that the group understood it that way. Yeah, threw a lot at you, but great discussion, love them all.
Everything we need to cover.
Yes, one brief thing. So from the doodle poll results, the winner in terms of an additional date for our final review of the draft. The winner was Thursday, August 29th. It had 7 votes, which was everyone, 18 votes, which was everyone who filled it out. So that would be, in addition to the meeting, that would be Tuesday, August 27th. There would be a Thursday, August 29th meeting at 6 p.m. There are any strong objections to that, we can discuss it, but not, we will, that can be also be something that you send me an email about. We'll send out confirmation tomorrow.
Okay, alrighty, we're gonna call it at 9:07 p.m. Next meeting is Wednesday, May 22nd.
You don't sound good. It's great. Like, allergy.